This is the story of a family, a brother and sister chasing their father's dream of building affordable, solid houses out of the earth.
You can hit it with a cannonball, my father would say. Blow it up, please, come and do whatever you want to do.
In the middle of California's Mojave Desert,
people come there and 6 days later, they walk out a different person.
welcome to the Cal Earth Institute. Founded in 1991 by architect Nader Khalili, Cal Earth is many things. A never-ending construction project, a place of learning, and an open-air exhibit proudly displaying Khalili's main achievements. There we find various emergency shelters, the Eco-Dome residences, the Rumi Dome, and the model home known as Earth One. These are his children, Shifta and Dastan, who now run the institute their father created.
Hi, my name is Dastan Khalili, and I'm the president of Cal Earth, which was created by my father, Nader Khalili.
My name is Shifta Khalili, and I'm one of the directors of Cal Earth Institute.
Cal Earth is a non-profit educational institute. We specialize in teaching people how to build super adobe architecture, which is what you see behind me and all around you. And we also do research and development to be on the cutting edge of sustainable green architecture.
On our site here, we have many homes of all sizes that have been built over the years by students, all made out of the earth.
My name's Ian Lodge, and I've been here at Cal Earth for 10 years. This is a zone of our site that I think really represents the essence of what we're doing here. We're trying to find ways to build out of the earth so that regular people can have a structure quickly that's safe.
This idea all started when my father presented a paper to NASA about how to build on the moon and Mars using the materials that were right there. Instead of taking materials with you, he came up with an idea to use what he called Velcro adobe, a tubing system that you could suck in the lunar dust and just build these coiled houses, which is basically what developed into the ideas that we're doing here nearly 30 years later.
In fact, these smaller buildings could be put together in a day, which is a really big deal. After an emergency, we could dispatch someone to wherever it is, and if they can put up structures like this in a day, that really can stabilize a situation that's chaotic, that's dangerous, that's tragic.
Nader Khalili's dream was to make owning a home accessible to everyone, and so it is without reservation that the Cal Earth Institute reveals its building techniques to the public.
With traditional architecture, pretty much means that they have enough time to pass out tents and supplies.
Open house is the first Saturday of every month, and it started because before we had a fence, people would just roam on site and start walking around out of curiosity, wondering what we were doing here. And my father believed that he could learn something from every single person, and so whoever he would see on site, he would welcome them in, he would show them around, he would tell them stories, and he just loved it. It was his favorite thing to do, and so when he realized how much interest there was in this work, he would just open the doors and say, on the first Saturday of every month, come on in, let me show you what I've done. He would sit down with everyone and tell stories. He would tell everyone about Cal Earth, how it started.
The universal principle of gravity, the geometry of the arch, using only bricks and rocks.
They're very interesting, actually. You know, it's not something you would think about as a traditionalist. It opens your mind to the possibilities of something else. It's interesting to see that you can still have a house that's just as awesome looking, but that's more sustainable.
This should stand on its own.
Since then, you know, we've had hundreds of thousands of people come through here. We never know who's going to come, and before the internet was even around, people were coming in groups of 100, you know, and my father would say, where did you come from? How did you find me? That we had no website back then, and we never advertised.
The first time I came here, I was struck by, first of all, the simplicity of the structures. I realized that these particular structures could be built very quickly and that they would resist most weather conditions. The more I came to learn about the structures inside and out, the more I realized that they're more than just aesthetically pleasing. They're also very strong, and they have a wonderful use in the third world, for example.
It definitely leads you to think about the possibilities of what could be, as opposed to what has been the norm.
The president of the Philippines, and he said, you know, we really recognize that this is the way the future is going to be. We have to find a way to build homes that are sustainable, inexpensive, and can handle this kind of thing. Will you help us? And we said, absolutely, we'll help you. But the key is that the people who want to live in these houses, they have to be involved in building these homes.
He would be so amazed. He'd say, you know, one person is 1,000 people. Every one of you leaves here and you go and tell someone and they tell someone, and that gives us an opportunity to continue to spread the word.
So we're so grateful for you coming. Enjoy the potluck lunch. Please ask questions, enjoy, tour, and have a good time. Thank you so much.
The Cal Earth Institute is located in San Bernardino County, California, 130 kilometers or 80 miles east of Los Angeles. In the small town of Hesperia, Nader Khalili made his home.
When my father came here in the early 90s and rented this piece of land, there was literally nothing. It was in the middle of the desert. There was just one small road. He used to just call Hesperia the off-ramp because all it was a place for people to get gas on the way to Las Vegas.
The Institute is now at the limits of the city, just steps from the Mojave Desert, one of the most visited places in California.
People often come here and they would ask my father, why are you here in the middle of nowhere? Why did you choose this place to do your work? And he said, this is the best place. What do you mean?
Hesperia is also a stop on the legendary BNSF Railway, one of the oldest in the United States. This historic journey takes travelers along the contours of Lake Silverwood, famous for its beautiful beaches and hiking trails. A few kilometers away, the Cajon Pass, a spectacular mountain pass created by the movements of the San Andreas Fault.
Cal Earth is on the edge of the Mojave Desert. It's one of the highest seismic zones in the country.
So can you think of a better place to test the construction? This is exactly the perfect place. You know, in the summers, we get blazing temperatures. In the winter, we have snow. We're at high elevation. We have flash floods.
So our buildings and the architecture is under constant strain, being affected by the environment.
I can't build in a perfect atmosphere and tell people that and live in Tornado Alley that, oh, I've really developed something. But when you're in a place with harsh conditions, you can really test your building to see if it will, in fact, sustain any kinds of conditions.
At the turn of the 2000s, Cal Earth's idyllic surroundings are transformed.
Eventually, after many years, people started to move up here. When the housing boom and there was all kinds of really low prices, people were moving here and driving all the way to Los Angeles. It was actually quite strange because we became surrounded on all sides by this other kind of architecture that are inefficient and ineffective. And although at first I think my father was upset, eventually he was able to use it as a teaching tool to say, look, there's an opportunity to build this instead of that.
All these houses are being built here. You know, a lot of them found out that their gas cost is more to go to Los Angeles and back here than in mortgage. You're just building a house. You're not building a home.
Nader Khalili was born in Tehran, Iran in 1936. His modest origins and grand ambitions pushed him to leave his country to study in the United States.
My father was from a very poor family in Iran, one of 9 children, and when he left Iran to pursue his dreams, he eventually came to the United States and he began to study architecture. He studied with multiple different people who trained him in apprenticeships.
And he had got his architectural license here in California, and he returned to Iran and started a very lucrative and successful architectural business.
It wasn't until he was probably in his 40s that he realized how miserable he was doing that kind of work, that even though he was making so much money and was really well known for being an urban developer, he realized that that wasn't what he wanted to do, and he was looking for inspiration elsewhere. One day, the story goes that he took my brother to the park. All the other children were running races, and so my father encouraged Gaston to run with them.
And we'd run around the park, see who would finish first. I was always last, because I was the youngest and the slowest. So finally, I returned to my dad and I said, Baba, I want to race alone. So my father said, okay, no problem. And this time I came back even later, but I had brought back a sycamore leaf.
And the next time he brought a flower, and over like this. And my father watched his son, and he had this realization that why is it that we race against others?
Not only is he enjoying the race, but he's always coming in first. So why am I in this rat race, racing for this next job, racing for the next paycheck? Because if I race against somebody else, I may reach their potential, but I'll never reach my true potential.
My father basically closed his office, bought a motorcycle, and went into the desert to start studying the traditional architecture and find a way to build for people who have no access to materials and who are completely poor, and all they have is literally the earth under their feet.
For Khalili, it was a journey of initiation, a return to first principles that gave him the idea that has driven him ever since, to build houses out of the cheapest and most accessible material possible, earth.
My father spent 5 years traveling throughout the deserts of Iran and trying to research this technology of how these people were building with the earth, these adobe homes that it's been standing for hundreds and hundreds of years. But sometimes, because it was made of the earth, it would fall, and if there was too much snow or rain. And he began to develop this idea that he later called ceramic houses, that what if you could set the house on fire?
If you take adobe and you fire it, you build a kiln around a house, and you cook it, then that creates stability, it makes it waterproof, and it makes it beautiful.
He would go door to door, essentially asking the people in the villages, excuse me, can I set your house on fire? Which didn't go well at first, but eventually he did find someone that was willing, and they fired this house for 48 hours, and it became this amazing structure. And he was actually able to be commissioned to build a 19-classroom school, glazed and fired completely out of earth, which still is there to this day.
Iran's Islamic Revolution forced Khalili to return to the United States in 1979. Filled with hope from all he had learned, he set out to promote his unique construction methods in California. But Khalili soon realized he was preaching in a desert rather than building homes. He decided to continue his work no matter what.
It was very challenging. Nobody really wanted to get behind it. It never really quite took off.
So he came out into the middle of the desert and began working with his students. Luckily, they got a phone call from a local brick company who had 50,000 reject bricks.
With those reject bricks, with a handful of students and a paint extender in the center used as a compass, they built the Rumi Dome.
After that, they looked for other kinds of materials that people could access anywhere. If you have bricks, great, build with bricks. If you have lumber, great, build with lumber. But there just isn't enough of those things. But what is in abundance is the earth. And so that's when he moved to building with sandbags, that, you can get sandbags anywhere. That he would say it's using the materials of war, sandbags, barbed wire, things like that, and to be able to use them to build homes for peaceful purposes.
If you can build a house like this in an afternoon, think about what that means. After the hurricane that just hit the Philippines, for instance, you've got thousands of people, thousands, with nowhere to live. We can arrive on site and put up these buildings so fast.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
In the 1980s, without a building permit, Nader Khalili began to erect his buildings, made from baked earth and sandbags. These were round, primitive forms that still managed to leave onlookers speechless.
I am Enrico Bressan. and I'm an architect, designer, engineer. At the beginning, it's always an issue of something very new, which is also in a way very old. So there was a double controversy in the technology because generally there is an acceptance nowadays to find something that is super high-tech in a way or is something that has never been done before. This is a technology that is as old as humankind, but at the same time needs to be rediscovered and brought forth, especially of people in need, because it's an architecture that is very accessible, made out of earth, water. So it's definitely a tool that needs to be known by more people, especially people of lower income.
During my father's lifetime and during the work that he was doing here at CalEarth, he was really focused on working with the building department, making sure that this work didn't just end up on the fringe, that it couldn't be used throughout the world to actually build.
I think, he started in a very natural approach. He had been an architect, he had built the conventional architecture structures, so he knew anyhow, even to build this, there is always paperwork and bureaucracy to go through. But to bring something like this, where there was no pre-existing writing codes in the codes of the building authorities, he knew that that was going to be tough.
I remember when we went to the UBC, National Building Code, finally to get their approval, the man said no. He said, look, for 18 months we have been writing to you, sending map, plans, everything, and you never tell us what to do. He said, I don't know, look at the code. No, you can't do that. There was no way we could change his mind.
My name is Dave Walker. I am a senior instructor at CalEarth. I remember going into the city of Hesperia as a contractor, not knowing Nader Khalili. And I remember in there pulling a permit for a different structure. They were kind of snickering and saying that this guy wants to build mud huts.
Well, the issue is a lot that because it's an architecture that had a very old elements, and it seemed like a poor architecture to some people. It was perceived as something that is not to build big skyscrapers or something that satisfies somebody's ego, but instead it satisfies somebody's needs.
He wanted to prove that his domes were earthquake resistant because if the ground opened up underneath, the teacup would fall. But if it is a hurricane, it's hurricane proof because the wind goes around the earth because it goes to the angle of repose. Nader knew all this stuff, but then have him take it to the building and safety committees, they rejected that greatly.
NASA, looking for design solutions for building on the moon and even Mars, took interest in Khalili's work and commissioned further research. The Office of the United Nations Refugee Agency consulted him to create strong, inexpensive shelters. But despite all this acclaim, the town of Hesperia made life difficult for their illustrious architect. Nader Khalili had to fight for 6 years just to obtain a building permit. Engineers Joanne Singer and Vicki Gray have recently joined the front lines of this fight.
They can't think outside the box. Anything that is not square and made of wood or concrete, they do not understand. They're not willing to try and analyze it because most of them do not have the schooling. Many of the directors of public works aren't even licensed engineers, and they just don't have the background.
But then, the industry, the professions, the building authorities, it becomes always something new and something maybe obscure and something to maybe be afraid of.
He would talk about the natural elements and things in nature that are so beautiful, flowers and trees, and by using those kinds of techniques, in our construction, you can actually see some of those natural forms.
So whenever you do that and you do something different, it's taken as a political message, and then it lends itself to discussion, which is fine because it raises some issue in our ideology, in our character, in our culture, that is sort of saying we need to reevaluate maybe, we need to rethink what we're doing.
But Khalili's persistence paid off.
My father faced so much resistance and so much difficulty, from whether it was the building department or just trying to convince people that this was worth pursuing. But I think because he was so focused on it, that it was such an important work to him, and he knew in his heart, how meaningful it was and how important it was, that's what got him to wake up every day and continue.
He decided the best way to approach it was just to do all his work, prepare all his engineering calculation, and just show up at the building authority here of City of Hesperia, shock the building planner that just threw his hands up in the air and said, I don't know what to do with this. But he said, well, you can't just dismiss me. I mean, I have done all the work here, all the calculation. You're just going to have to reply me. And that was the beginning of pulling this thread.
He kept persistently doing it, and finally a grant came through that allowed him to pay for seismic testing. He knew that all of his structures were very strong.
Even though they said it works on paper and all this, we never seen something like this, and we have to build it, and we're going to come and test it.
You can hit it with a cannonball, my father would say. Blow it up. Please come and do whatever you want to do. And when the building officials came to do the tests on the building, you know, they were trying to shear the buildings from place, and they said something like 1 millimeter of movement was failure. And so my father was so nervous, and the building official came to him at the end of the day and said, look, Mr. Khalili, we're going to have to stop the test. And he said, oh, you know, he thought that he had failed. And the building official said, our machinery is going to fail if we continue. And that kind of information really showed my father that the potential that he knew was here was now, in fact, you know, in data that he could show other people.
We came here, we set up the place, and we could hardly get a permit to do a 10-foot dome, very, very small dome. And then from there on, all of these happened.
It's a great day for Nader.
The first goal of the Cal Earth Institute is to spread Khalili's construction methods. Every year, students from all over the world come to learn his techniques.
Not everybody has a lot of time. So in 1 week, we've distilled all of the research we've done over the years into a very information-rich program. And most people who we teach take that 1 week workshop. And then there's another program that's a little longer. It's called our long-term program. That's for somebody who might want to not just build their own house, but maybe make a career out of building.
My name is Joel Vega. I'm from Costa Rica. I was a long-term apprentice here started in the winter season. And well, I live in a farm in Costa Rica.
In terms of the selection of the apprentices, it's fairly intuitive. It involves a 1.5-hour interview. And really what I'm looking for, not people who are jumping all over from one thing to another, but somebody who's committed. We raise much of our operating budget from tuition that apprentices pay. So it's important that people pay the tuition, but we have a flexible approach to that. Some people from other countries, they're just not in a position to come up with the money.
Well, I just explain my situation. I really live off the grid. The money you can get, like really living from the land, is not like to really pay a lot of things for studying, right? Because that's the life I choose.
He didn't have a hope in getting here, buying his flight, paying the tuition, but what an important part of the world to take solutions like we have. So we made it happen. We brought him in, and we have scholarships and work exchange arrangements. So they come in early, before the workshop, do lots of work, help us out, and then in exchange, they get a reduction in their tuition.
Here, students learn the hard way by getting their hands dirty. And the days are long, 8 to 9 hours a day under the blazing sun.
As a general contractor, they asked me to check it out. I was totally thrilled at a new type of building that was different from the corporate world, the straight square lines and bevels and things such as that. They've asked me as a general contractor to come in and help them out from time to time, but now I'm one of the senior instructors there. We teach them how to build in a small wheelbarrow. You take and clean out the center, and then you add water, and then you slowly, small little chops, and that mixes the soil. You don't do this and throw it over because you're gonna throw your back out. What you do is just small little chops, and then turn around and go the other opposite direction.
And our earth is looking pretty good by this point, so we can go ahead and test it by hand and squeezing it just until it's a lump.
It's got that subtle bit of moisture content. It's not sticking to my hands. It's holding shape. I'd say it's perfecto.
We teach them how to fold the bag so that it stops. We show them how the right consistency of the earth should be with the hydration, bringing water in, the compaction so that when you tamp it, it becomes hard and firm. With that, we show them how to fill the bag and how to rotate it or how to turn it on a dome.
I need more for the nose, I think. What's it look like from where you're at, Howard?
You could put a half a bucket in maybe at the most.
Okay.
And then we tamp it on the ground to compact it. You want to keep everything in compression. And then you lay it down. And then we teach them how to use tensile strength or bob wire, the weapon of war, to bring in and close a circle and make that tension. When you tamp everything and you have the bob wire on there, we teach you how to weave it because you have to walk on it. I want somebody to hold that person's hand so that I can explain the security that's necessary for that. Okay. Bob wire comes in two different directions. You got a bob wire this way and a bob wire that way. And so we teach you how to weave that in the bag so that it stays there and that you can walk on it. And then we teach you how to tamp it. And then we repeat, 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 repeat. And 23 layers later, you have a dome. Everyone can do this. What really sold me is when I saw my 7-year-old grandson at the time help his father take a 1-gallon coffee can and dump it in a bag to build his home. Brought tears to my eyes.
Naturally, there are plenty of prototypes and sandbags lying around Cal Earth, but there are model homes as well. All that's required is to buy the plans, obtain municipal building permits, and procure the main material, earth.
This is the Eco Dome. It's a dome. It's super adobe. It's just a little bigger. It's ecological. It's low energy. It's cool. When it's hot outside, you have massive earthen walls that create this thermal barrier. And so when it's really hot outside, this building's cool. This is a clay-based paint. When you mix up the earth, you can filter out certain elements in it, and you start to get the pigments and the colors of the clay. So this is something Khalili loved, and he called it earth paint. Since heating and cooling costs are a really big deal, it's not just how much does a house cost to build, it's how much does it cost to maintain. Therefore, it's reasonable to call this an eco-dome because the maintenance costs are really low. And it's affordable too. That's a really big deal. It costs $9,500 US dollars for the materials for this building. Now that doesn't include labor, okay? If you had to hire somebody to build this, you might be paying another $20,000 for labor because labor's not cheap in the developed world.
Temporary shelters are built in a day, but the more elaborate eco-dome takes approximately 20 weeks of full-time work to complete.
Think about that. Materially, the guts of this structure were less than $10,000. That's something to talk about.
The centerpiece of Cal Earth is Earth 1, a conventional home. Well, a conventional home that NASA studied for viability as a shelter on the moon.
This is Earth 1, which is a 3-bedroom, 2-car garage house. It's over 1,800 square feet, and it was essentially designed by my father to show how you could utilize this technology, building with earth, and not only could you build a small shelter for, you know, disaster situations, but that you could actually build an entire house, and the material right here in the wall is 90% of the earth that's right here from under our feet. He would say, what you do is you dig your swimming pool and you build your house, and if you go behind the house, you'll actually see a big pit, which is essentially designed for a sunken garden or a swimming pool, and all the material was used to build this house. One of the main features that's special about this house is this wind scoop, which is essentially a passive cooling system that it brings the cool wind that comes from the southwest, and when we open that up, it brings it throughout the house and it circulates, so we don't ever even turn the air conditioning on in the house, even in the middle of the summer here in the hot desert. You'll notice the openness that, you know, this entire space is open to one another, and it allows this really beautiful high ceilings. And this is the nicest part of the house, I think, like the kitchen. And I really like when you come into the kitchen and you look out. What's amazing is when you can kind of see the whole house from this position of the kitchen. And my father really didn't want to have, you know, the typical homes, there's like a long hallway that goes through the house, or you have to open a door to go from room to room. And he found a way to kind of put the vaults stacked next to each other so that the rooms flow into each other, and then there's just a small hallway that opens into the bedrooms. It's just, you feel the openness of the space, which is really, really nice. You know, this is the American dream. I mean, to have a home like this.
Total area of the residence 200 square meters, or 2,150 square feet, enough to accommodate an average North American family. And the total cost of the house? Approximately $250,000, assuming you build it on planet Earth.
You don't need to be an architect or an engineer to be able to build a home like this. We actually have the entire blueprint and the whole design laid out for this. This is a fully permitted structure, and you just buy the blueprint and it's already stamped here in our county, San Bernardino County. Either you could come and study here or have somebody from our team potentially come and build for you. So it's something that's amazing that even if you haven't been trained in architecture, by coming and studying here, you will gain the skills to be able to build yourself a home. You know, maybe you should start with a small shelter before you try this, but this is a similar kind of skill that just requires a little bit more refinement and a little bit of practice, and you're able to build this amazing building.
Securing construction permits for San Bernardino County is just one goal of the CalEarth team. The next is updating international building codes to recognize their mode of design.
The process for getting these approved is a very lengthy process, and it involves dealing with a lot of interesting individuals, many of whom do not think women should be engineers, and they're very vocal about it. But San Bernardino County was nice enough to remove the project from these particular folks and plan check it themselves.
The idea right now is there is a national or international code called the IBC, and the IBC is for all over the world. We got these approved through the 2011 CBC, the California Building Code. So right now they've been approved in the county, and as far as like going on the other side of the world, it depends on their procedure. If they see it's been approved under the California Building Code, which is usually more stringent than the IBC, then they would probably automatically accept the current stock plans.
I think it's wonderful. I think I'm looking at this and I think I could live in this. This is too cool.
There isn't even, in fact, a building code that fits with the work that we do, that we've had to fit, how do they say, a square peg in a round hole, that we're using a set of building codes designed for something else, because earth-back architecture has only been developed, you know, here at CalEarth and a few other places over the past 30 or so years using some of my father's ideas. So the fact that we have all of those tests and all the engineering is huge for us. That, yeah, it's true, maybe this hasn't been built in every part of the world in, you know, millions and millions of these homes, but there's domes, I would say, in just about every country by this point.
Slowly and discreetly, Khalili's designs are gaining ground in the United States. Dave Walker, an instructor at the Institute, is helping his stepson build his own home, an increasingly attractive alternative to the expensive real estate market.
We knew that we wanted to go in that direction because we had already kind of been through the rough period of 2008 with the economy and different things that had kind of happened. And we had lost our home and some other things, and we were in a situation where we kind of felt like we wanted to take control of our lives. It always seems like there's up and downs in the economy and different things like that, and so you never really know for sure that you're stable. So we just decided to go with the money that we had, and we just decided to do it ourselves. We started the project, our whole endeavor on the land and everything, probably 3 years ago. It started off as a 16-foot dome, right?
Yes, a 16-foot dome.
I decided to put it 5 feet down in the ground. It took a little while to get the hole dug proper and the different things that we had to do to get it prepared to even start. We tamped and compacted, watered the earth for 9 months. We just soaked and tamped. And then we honestly just designed as we went. I've really honestly just used my imagination as I've gone. I got up higher, decided to add another 12-foot dome to that, created a hallway, and honestly, I've just done it my way. You know, you can wear yourself out quick if you're too overzealous with this stuff. You know, you really just got to slow down and learn to enjoy it.
All I did is show them a few things and answered a couple questions over the phone and come out occasionally.
Yeah, well, I definitely couldn't have done it without him.
Nader Khalili's death in 2008 came as a shock to the small community of Cal Earth. How could they continue the work of this larger-than-life figure in a place so filled with his memory?
I grew up here at Cal Earth, and it was a very unique experience because I would bring my classrooms up here for field trips, or my father would come to our class and teach children in the class. He would ask everyone to go on the board and to draw a house. And so everyone, what would they draw? They would draw a square with a triangle and a small chimney and a door and a window. And then he would talk about how drawing houses like that as children, that is the kind of thing that, you know, destroys the forest, and that he would teach the children to build rainbow homes.
Houses from now on is going to be rainbows. Instead of that, you're just going to design with rainbows.
Growing up with that kind of a message from my father, to have the opportunity to come up here on the weekends and interact with all these people who are interested in this work, this has been part of my life since I was a very small child. And so it was definitely a shock when my father passed away. And I don't know that we ever expected to be here without him, but we got together and just realized that this work was so important, and he had left behind such a treasure for us that we couldn't not continue it. And it was never a question of what we were going to do, it was just how.
I didn't attend his funeral, and that's because I was just starting a job, a double ecodome. I was doing Khalili's work out there in the field. I sat quietly myself and I asked myself this question: what would Nader want me to do? And it was an easy answer. I stayed out on the job and I did it. Obviously, I thought about him. I thought, you know, I was full of emotion.
We're always part of our father's dream and his work, but never that integrated into it, you know. And I always wish to this day that I had worked for my father at Cal Earth, at least so I could have seen him. But, you know, I guess everything happens for a reason, and we took over, and it was very challenging. It was a difficult experience, and there's a lot to running a nonprofit that I think people don't realize from the outside.
No question about it. It was difficult. They were learning, and as I say, the boat sort of lunged from one side to another for a while. For all of us.
Learning how to even do bookkeeping for a nonprofit, or how to maintain your status as a nonprofit, how to secure funding, and things that we're still learning to this day that, you know, we haven't figured it all out.
Cal Earth is a nonprofit organization. They insist on making their technology available to anyone interested. And their goal, for now and the future, is to continue teaching their methods.
Developing the research, simplifying the ideas, really distilling them down to be accessible throughout the world, that anyone could do this work. So simple, so basic. And we've had the opportunity now, thanks to social media, thanks to the internet, to really spread the word, you know, that our YouTube videos have almost 1 million views, that we have 10,000 something fans on Facebook, that people come here every month, and it just continues to expand and grow. And we see this ultimately as a school. It has always been a school, and it's going to continue to grow, that we hope to be able to offer other kinds of educational programs in conjunction with our architecture. We hope to be able to do more online education. We hope to be able to do programs throughout the world, because if it's not accessible, it's not sustainable. If it's not affordable, it's not sustainable. And that's really the key to this work.
The objective of the school is at 2 levels. The first level is to continue to educate people and expand so it becomes ultimately a university of sustainability where you can come and study, and when you leave here, you can build an off-grid home that has all the aspects that you need. The second aspect is disaster relief. And we'd like to ultimately develop a team that can respond to any situation and show up and teach people to start how to build and develop homes and things of that nature. So that's kind of like the 2-pronged goal that we are looking at for the future. There's a lot of sandbag architecture that people teach in the world, but this system is very specific. And what makes it so effective is the geometry and the universal principle of gravity, and that is the structure. Because when you build with an arch, and you spin it on its axis or repeat it, and it becomes a vault or a dome, it becomes quite strong. The reason for this is that it's a monolithic structure, and it's working in harmony with gravity.
It's amazing the potential of this work. I think that my father brought it from creation and brought it up to here for us, and we can't even imagine, I think, how much bigger it can get. We're so excited just, you know, at how much we've been able to do with the vision that he left for us. And going forward, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
I feel inspired. It's one of those things, once you put yourself in that environment, then you find out the little discoveries here and there. I believe that an otter spirit still exists at Cal Earth, whether anyone knows it or not. It's just that people come there, and 6 days later, they walk out a different person.
My father would always say, the truly only thing that's sustainable is the hurricane, is the earthquake, is the tornado, because they will always come back. So why do we go back building the same thing, expecting different results?